Hey everyone, I'm Nick Sundahl with Aikta Homes, and this is Minneapolis Living. In this video, I'm collaborating with another YouTube realtor, Austin Weiss, out of the Chicagoland area. And because so many people are moving between Chicago and the Twin Cities, I thought it would be a great way for people to learn between the two communities and what to expect when living there. Before we get there, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them below. And if you're thinking about moving to the Twin Cities or within, you got to reach out. You can call, text, email, slide in my DMs on social media, but I would love to start the conversation with you. Now, on to our chat. Hey, Austin. It's awesome to finally meet you. I'm really excited living here in the Twin Cities. I don't know a ton about Chicago. Visited a handful of times, but I think this is going to be great for our viewer.
Yeah, I can't wait because I've never personally been to Minneapolis, so I really cannot wait to just kind of figure out what's going on there, get your unbiased opinion, and just kind of dive into what people are doing there in Minneapolis and kind of give some insight to people about Chicago as well.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of people that move in between our two cities, and I think this is going to be a good opportunity for them to learn a little bit about, what to expect if they're going to be either traveling between and just visiting, or if they want to decide to move.
Sure. No, I totally get it. So why don't I kick it off?
Absolutely.
I'm really curious because Chicago metropolis is about 10 million. The city of Chicago is a little less than 3 million, I believe. How big is Minneapolis?
It's significantly smaller. Minneapolis itself is about 400,000 people. You add in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the greater metro area, which constitutes, about 13 counties. We're a little over 3 million. So,
wow.
So in terms of rankings, we're probably right. We're the 14th biggest media market, and we're the 16th biggest in terms of population, in terms of metro area. So it's not a huge community, but we're the smallest metro area that has the four major sports.
Okay, cool. And we'll get into sports. We'll get to sports later. Yeah. So I'm curious, do the suburbs sprawl? Is it like spread out, or is it like more compact, closer to the city?
It's sprawl. Minneapolis, St. Paul is somewhat densely populated. It's not overly dense by any means. A lot of single family homes, some condos, but overall it's not densely populated. We do have some urban sprawl, mostly to the north and to the south.
Gotcha. Okay.
How about Chicago? Chicago obviously is huge in terms of like the city proper, from what I understand, but there's a lot of suburbs.
The city is very skinny. So if you look on the map from north to south, it's very long, and then it's skinny as it hugs Lake Michigan. And then the suburbs just kind of spiderweb out. As you get closer to the city, the lot and the property size you'll get for whatever property you purchase will be smaller. And then as you get further out, you actually get more into like farm country, maybe like 50 miles out from the city. So you probably could get acreage with a house and still be within like an hour and a half drive of the city if that's something that you require. So you said something interesting, because I don't know much about Minneapolis. So you said St. Paul. Tell me about the proximity of those two towns or cities, and then what the differences are between St. Paul and Minneapolis.
Sure. Well, St. Paul, obviously being part of the Twin Cities, it's significantly older. It was the first one settled because it's separated by the Mississippi River. So the river divides the two communities. The big difference between Minneapolis and St. Paul is that age kind of lends itself to more working class versus white collar. Minneapolis has long been considered more a cosmopolitan type town, where St. Paul is much more, the meat and potatoes, blue collar worker,
sure.
Industrial style. In terms of, Chicago, how does that separate itself, and even including like the suburbs?
Chicago is just, there's dozens of different neighborhoods within the city proper, and when you get out in the suburbs, it's a whole different ballgame, because there's also dozens of suburbs, and each one has its own kind of micro community, personality, and kind of things that they're known for. So I've done a ton of different videos about the different sections of the suburbs and the city. So if you ever want to check more out, you're always welcome to visit my channel to check out those different videos. But the suburbs, if you want more space, probably slightly better education as far as public schools. And then the cities is just that, that's where all the action's at. So you're going to have your sports teams, It's more of a city life, so there's going to be condo towers mostly, unless you get on the outskirts of town or outside of downtown Chicago.
What kind of commuting are you looking at when it comes to moving around the Chicago area?
Yeah, so I think that's a big one. I'm glad you asked that. So commuting is there's a great highway system. So if you do want to drive, you can easily get to places fairly quickly. Of course, there's going to be those rush hours between 7 and 9 in the morning, probably about 4 to 6 p.m. in the evening. But we do have a great metro train line that spiderwebs out throughout the suburbs, and you can get into the city or various suburbs, depending on where you work. And then within the city proper, we have something called the L line, and that's the train system. It's kind of like an above ground subway.
Right.
So,
elevated.
Yeah, elevated. So it's confusing if you don't understand it, but every train line is a different color. So you can get pretty much anywhere throughout the city, and it goes out to some of the collar suburbs that hug the city as well. So tell me a little bit more about how people commute in Minneapolis.
We are built on a highway system. We do not really have a lot of public transit. That is changing a little bit. About 10 years ago, we started a light rail system, and that light rail went from downtown Minneapolis to the airport. That was like the first line. And it goes all the way through South Minneapolis down into like Bloomington. I think it actually reaches the Mall of America, which is just south of the airport. So you could, if you were staying at a hotel at the Mall of America, you could take the train all the way up into downtown Minneapolis and catch a Twins game. It's now moved from Minneapolis over to St. Paul in between, because there's a handful of college campuses that go in between.
Yeah.
We've got a Blue Star North Rail that goes to Big Lake, which is about 45 minutes northwest of Minneapolis. So we are getting some commuting when it comes to that. And there is plans to expand all that light rail. However, it's still fairly limited, and people are, I think, they're not quite using it yet. So it's mostly highway system. 694 and 494 form a ring around the Twin Cities. That 94 goes all the way to Milwaukee, and you can take I-90 to Chicago. And it's that same interstate, right?
Okay, so that's how I would get there.
Right, you take I-90 out to 94 through Madison, and you're on your zip. But we're on a grid system when it comes to the overall highway. So we've got a handful of highways that go north and south, and a few highways that go east and west. Outside of downtown St. Paul are also on a grid system.
And then where are people commuting to? I mean, what are the major corporations? What are people mostly employed? I guess, what's the difference between St. Paul and Minneapolis for jobs?
Well, the Twin Cities has a ton of Fortune 5s, which is pretty cool. We've got companies such as Target, Best Buy, United Healthcare, which is, I think, the biggest employer in the entire Twin Cities area. So healthcare and financial services are the biggest industries in the Twin Cities. And a lot of those are actually on either the west, southwest, or south part of the metro area. We are very much a service-driven community or economy, as opposed to, say, like manufacturing. Or how about Chicago? Where are most of the companies that are in Chicago, and where are going?
I think it's because real estate's so expensive downtown Chicago. A lot of major corporations that are headquartered here will have an office in one of the business towers in the business district. But then their main warehouse or office where a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand people are employed will be out in one of the suburbs. So there's it's kind of interesting, because if you look at the map, you'll have Schaumburg, Deerfield up north, Oak Brook straight out to the west, and then a couple towns and more warehouses down in the southwest suburbs. So that's kind of where the mini hubs of business districts are, and a lot of offices are in those towns outside of the city. And then, like I said, you'll probably find, if you get further out from the city, maybe more in the southwest, you'll see acres of warehouses, not only for Amazon, Best Buy, and a lot of other places, because they have to service all these people that live here, because the metropolis of Chicago is huge. So they have a ton of storage spaces, and you'll just see row after row driving on the highway, warehouses going down the highway.
Well, and you got to believe it's a huge distribution hub, not only just for Chicago, but maybe in the upper Midwest.
Distribution's huge.
Moving out to like Rockford or
Yeah.
right?
I have quite a few friends who are working in the logistics industry out of Oak Brook, which is probably a half-hour drive outside the city. And they're just moving from train car to semi truck all the time and just shipping stuff out all throughout. As my dog tries to barge through my door here, but yeah, it's incredible how much manufacturing and shipping and logistics just happens in this area. And going off of that, yeah, because the population here in Chicago is so large, about 10 million people in the whole Chicago metropolis, our hospital network and outpatient centers are absolutely huge. So if you're in any type of therapy, nurse, doctor, anything like that involves healthcare, there's probably a ton of job openings for you here because there's always a revolving door of patients. Going off of that, manufacturing is huge, as I mentioned, through like all the logistics and the train lines that go out of Chicago throughout the Midwest and out to the West Coast is absolutely enormous. This is probably the hub to ship for most of the stuff on the West Coast and the Midwest for that matter. I'm sure that we have trains going up to Minneapolis all the time. And then, going off of that, just a huge, service sector as well, businesses, and we have our own stock exchange here as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on with finance and different occupations that service that industry as well.
Well, it sounds like it's pretty well rounded, just like we are up here. So
yeah, I mean, there isn't really one industry that kind of Chicago relies on because there's so many, and I think that's what allows it to be as large of a city as it is. And through any recession, we usually get out of it okay. Because there isn't really that reliance on one specific occupation. So that's probably one of the benefits of living here in the area.
Yeah, I think we see very similar things here as well. It's just just on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
So, well, that being said, let's move into some of the more things that people really want to know.
Okay.
And that's weather, right? Midwesterners, we always want to know about the weather.
Yeah, so I would say the weather in the city of Chicago is so totally different from the suburbs. You get that lake effect from Lake Michigan, and it could be snowing in the city and be like 25 degrees, and out in the suburbs it could be honestly like 10, 15 degrees warmer, sunny, like you don't even know it's snowing, and then you watch the news that evening, it's like they got 4 inches of snow in the city, like that's ridiculous. And I've been caught in those storms plenty of times when I'm down in the city, either looking at houses or visiting friends and whatnot, and I drive out to the suburbs and it's completely different. Especially in the summer, you'll be sitting there on the beach in Lake Michigan and it'll be 90 degrees or whatever, and then when you drive back out to the suburbs, it'll be 75 degrees, cloudy, and it's like what happened? So those breezes off the lake and those cooling fronts and warm fronts really change the weather between not like 20 miles just outside the city, not even.
You figure that lake effect would actually mild things out.
Yeah, I think when we do get those probably 2 or 3 weeks during the summer where the humidity just kind of like ruins everybody's day and whatnot, and it's 85, 90 degrees, I think the city does play a factor in keeping that heat there. But then that reverse effect obviously happens with cooler temperatures as well, because the wind just whips right through those city streets and gets the humidity out of there, and it can get really cold really quickly. But I would say, I just talked about this in another one of my videos, but I would say 4 out of the last 5 years, the weather has been very mild here. We don't get the 6 to 12 inches of snow like we used to, probably when I was a kid. I remember getting like 3 or 4 school days off a year, and I feel like kids don't get that anymore. So I don't know. Tell me a little bit about the snow and the weather and what summer's like there in Minneapolis.
We get hot summers, and of course, we're known for cold winters. Overall snowfall is it can be anywhere from 35 to 45 inches for the year.
Wow!
During the season, but the funny part of it is the majority of the snow that we get is either early or it's late.
Okay.
Don't get a ton of snow in the winter months. We don't really get a lot of snow until say March is actually our snowiest month of the year usually. The benefit though is that we also get, those 50, 60 degree days every now and then. Right. So it goes quickly, right? Okay. Yeah. You have to deal with it. It's a pain, but it melts and you move on. When it comes to the summers, we deal with a similar situation. We get those few weeks a year where it's just 90 plus, high humidity, and you're just walking down the street and sweating, right? It's really hard to just not to stay cool.
Sure.
We don't have the benefit of, a massive lake, unless you want to go head up to Duluth or something and hang out at Lake Superior. But in the Twin Cities itself, that's when people are in the lakes and in the rivers, right?
Okay.
And chilling on boats and stuff. So overall, the weather you can expect to, be shoveling and scraping ice and that kind of stuff. But, like they say, it's never too cold. You just don't have enough clothes.
There you go. I love it. So I do get phone calls from people from the southern states or central, United States, whatever. And they always ask me about the snow. That's like the first go-to thing because they're not used to it. And you said something funny, or not funny, but interesting. I'm used to it. Well, you said it melts. So tell everybody, you said you get 35, 40, 45 inches a year. It's not cumulative, right? It's just throughout the winter, it melts.
Yeah, that's total that we'll get in a year. So for example, the end of, actually towards the end of October, we got an 8-inch snowfall. That was gone in 2 weeks. Okay. It melted, right? It warmed back up because even though our falls, we can get somewhat chilly, we still have, the 45 to 55 degree days, especially over the last handful of years. It's been fairly mild. We get some of those real bad cold snaps, but they usually happen in January and February, 2 coldest months of the year. But up and through the holiday season, it's pretty manageable once, if you've been here for as long as I have, born and raised, you're totally used to it. And then even like I said, in March, there's times where you get like a 12-inch snowfall.
Crazy. And
MnDOT, our Department of Transportation, the plows are out, they salt, they, take care of it so you can get your commute going. But again, it's one of those things you have to take into account and be prepared for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Snow is definitely something I look forward to every year and dread at the same time. So
absolutely.
It can definitely ruin your day real quick.
Yeah, no question.
Okay, cool. So I am curious, what is Minneapolis known for? Like if someone doesn't know anything about it, like me, what is something that they should know?
In the winter, there are more things to do than I think people realize. You just have to understand that, it's outdoor stuff. We've got more parks per square mile than I think most metro areas. You're never outside of 6 miles of a park. So whether you want to go just take the dogs for a walk, even the bigger city parks, cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and things like just some outdoor stuff. And they've got warm-up chalets where you can go have coffee or hot chocolate or whiskey, that kind of thing. But so there, and then of course, we've got 4 indoor malls. So there's plenty of indoor stuff to do, plenty of outdoor stuff to do. In the summer, it's hanging out at the lake or heading up north to some friend's, cabin. Outdoor stuff is definitely what we're known for. Cold winters, hot summers. It's kind of the same song and dance. What about Chicago? What do you think kind of defines the city, if you will?
Hardworking people, but something a little bit more fun. I think everyone knows about the food. The deep dish pizza, the hot dogs, the Italian beef. But I think if someone were to, not read about anything online or maybe really have to dig for it, that someone didn't know about it and coming from someone who actually lives here, I would just say that it's a fantastic city to kind of start your career and meet someone. There's so many different types of people here. The diversity is crazy. It's like, there's something for everybody here. And I think that people don't really realize that because unless you live here, unless you're living in the community, you're not gonna know, what the go-to restaurant is or what's going on. There's so many street festivals in the city and the suburbs. It's just there's some energy about the city and the area that people just don't understand unless you come visit here. So I would say that.
Hey, if you're finding value in this video or just enjoying it, it would really help it get out to more people if you hit that like button. You can leave a comment, but don't forget to subscribe.
Speaking of different types of housing, let's jump into that because I think that's what someone would really want to know, whether or not they can afford it or not, and what style of housing they have there. So tell me a little bit more about how much house you can get, maybe in the city, and what kind of housing they have to offer, and then maybe kind of like the average price point of the suburbs and some of the good areas.
Yeah, and I'll just start off with the greater metro area. Our median sale price is about $305,000.
Okay.
That includes townhouses and condominiums. The condo market is actually pretty small. We have two really major areas, and that's along the river, on both sides of town. So if you wouldn't be downtown Minneapolis, there's some really up and coming, some areas that have been kind of gentrified, and they're, upscale. Some that have been, transformed from old warehouses into kind of loft style condominiums. But for the most part, the Twin Cities make up single family homes on lots anywhere from, a tenth of an acre to half an acre, depending on the neighborhood. And that land kind of drives our prices quite a bit. If you're living like in the city proper, most of the homes are upwards of 100 years old, 2-story, small basements, but they're, usually unfinished. As you move out from the city, the first ring suburbs were built in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So you see a lot of ranch style homes. Okay. Most of our homes have basements, and the majority of them are finished basements. And then after you move outside that ring I mentioned earlier, you're moving more into like the contemporary 2-story homes, the craftsman styles, the split entry, split level, and executive 2-story types as it kind of spreads out. The western suburbs are the wealthier suburbs, the home in income, and those prices are higher. The schools are rated higher. We have a really great public school system overall in the Twin Cities. There are a bunch of really great private schools, but most people send their kids to public school here. So, awesome. So when it comes to Chicago, where are you seeing the biggest growth, and what can people expect when it comes to the style of homes?
Yeah, so I actually did a video about that probably last spring, which you can watch right here. It's 5 up and coming neighborhoods in Chicago, based on kind of appreciation rate and what you can get for bang for your buck. So definitely check that out. The city is very interesting because I would say the surrounding neighborhoods, and certainly the business district and the Loop area, it's mostly condo towers. So River North, Lincoln Park, South Loop, and West Loop, things like that. It's basically all condo towers, maybe a couple 3 and 4 flats that they've now separated into condos. And then if you're looking more for like a single family house, you're going to be more on like the outskirts in those neighborhoods, and more on the north side, and then certainly on the south side as well. Price points are going to vary. I mean, one street could be like $500,000 for a 2-bedroom condo, and then 3 streets over, it's like, $350 for the same thing. So it really depends on the neighborhood you want to be in, the amenities in the area, how close you are to a CTA L train stop, what's in that area. So it could really change on a dime in the city. As far as the suburbs, there's price points all over. I've sold quite a few houses in that 250 to 300,000 range, no problem. And then, if you're looking for $1 million house or, a 5,000 square foot house, you can find that too. So the suburbs vary, drastically as well, depending on school district. That will definitely change the valuation in the properties, and then how close you are to the metro line and the highway entrances, and then what those communities have to offer in the downtown area. So I tend to concentrate a lot in the western suburbs. So if you're ever curious, I actually did another video about the western suburbs and the hotspots that live right there, so you can check that out. But you can find stuff at all different price points, anywhere from about 200,000 all the way up to $1 million. Depends on what you want and what you need for your family. So,
and just one thing to note, our housing is completely dependent on schools, on which schools. And then there's a really big kind of identifier, and that's we have a lot of lakeshore property. There are small lakes. Some are considered, you can probably consider a pond, even though they're not man-made. They're really small, but even anything that has water gets like an instant boost of like 10 to 20% minimum. And if you want to live on some of the bigger lakes, it can just skyrocket up to like $1.5 million, $5 million kind of things where, and these are like palatial estate kind
right.
of.
Isn't it land of 10,000 lakes?
It is. Okay. And there are more than that, but like I said, those little ones, I mean, some of them literally, they look like ponds. You wouldn't even want to go in them because they get so much like crazy runoff. It's just,
yeah. And Nick, it's funny what you said about the basements, because I have relatives that live in Louisiana and a couple other states where the soil maybe can't take the foundation, so they are on slabs. But here in the Chicagoland area, I would say 75% of the houses have basements.
Okay.
Which I didn't know growing up. I thought every house had a basement, but
yeah, me too.
I was a realtor coming across plenty of houses on crawl spaces or slabs, and I couldn't believe it. But actually, this house I'm in right now, it's on a slab, and all my neighbors around me, it's hit or miss whether they have a basement or not. But yeah, it's real big to finish your basement here. Put in that workout room, the bar,
man cave,
cellar, whatever you want to entertain. And then, bathrooms are huge in the basement here, and whether or not you want an extra guest room or not.
Sure. Yeah. And we're kind of, it's very similar in that regard.
Yeah. And you could do that because the soil here is more like clay, which I'm sure is similar to you. So the foundation doesn't move as easily as it would if it was sand or more, water dense.
Yeah, and even though we have all those lakes, it's surprising how easy the water table is not that high. So you're going to find that a little bit different depending on where you go in the state. But when it comes to the cities, it's not something you need to worry about. You're more worried about basic water intrusion issues than you are water table stuff coming up from below.
Tell me a little bit about what people do for fun there. I know you mentioned a few things, but if you want to hit on a couple others, I'm curious.
Yeah, like I said, in the winter it's outdoor activities. There's a lot of we've got a lot of bike paths here. So throughout the Twin Cities, there's bike paths that you can, if you enjoy biking, we've got more, I think, paved bike space than anywhere but like Portland, Oregon, I think. It's amazing where you can get on your bike. So that's big in the winter and in the summer, of course. And of course, cross country skiing, snowshoeing, those kind of things. We have some downhill hills, but they're kind of small in the metro area. But you're not that far away. If you go up to say Duluth, which is about 2 hours away from some decent downhill skiing.
Oh, neat.
When it comes to the summer, it's hanging out at the lake. And it's finding water and whatever you can do to chill. And then we've got a ton of golf courses. So as far as on a per capita basis, so there's a lot of fun things you can do outside. And most people head out of town for the weekend to somebody's cabin.
Yeah, I would say it's very similar here. As far as a lot of people have cabins in Wisconsin, Kentucky, and Michigan here that live in the Chicago area. So they like to go 3, 4, 5 hour drive away to go to their cabin for the weekend. But very similar as far as, what people do for fun. Biking's huge here in the cities, definitely on the lakefront trail. Pretty much a lot of different trails out here in the suburbs as well, Illinois Prairie Paths and things like that. But I think one thing that is different, and maybe in a sense because we have Lake Michigan, people take advantage of those beaches all the time in the city. And unfortunately, they were closed this year, the whole entire year. So people really didn't have much to do. You think for social distancing, the beach would probably be a decent place to do that, but they shut them down. And we have a lot of rooftop bars in the city as well. So it's really cool to kind of be on the 60th floor.
Oh, very cool.
Sipping a brewski and just checking out the skyline. I've gone to several spots where it's just absolutely phenomenal. Maybe I'll do a video on it in the future, but.
Oh yeah, you should.
Yeah, it's really cool. Out in the suburbs, I would say, because, Lake Michigan's further away, there's a lot of neighborhood pools or community swimming holes and things like that. And then in the winter, they do lay down ice a lot in a controlled ice hockey environment.
Sure.
For people to go do, because we don't really have mountains or hills around here for skiing.
Right.
We go up to Wisconsin to go do that. But yeah, as far as what people do here, I floated down the river on my kayak a lot this summer. So that was kind of cool. I actually did a video about that as well. So there's a lot of outdoor stuff to do here when it's warm and cold, and just kind of depends on what you're interested in. Yeah,
we do a lot of outdoor dining in the summer here. That's for sure.
Oh yeah,
it's patio season, so it's it's rosé and as far as the eye can see.
Yeah. Very cool. I mean, other than calling you if they ever have a question about moving there.
There you go.
That's what they need to know, right?
I think here's the pipeline, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Got somebody moving to Chicago, you got to call Austin.
There you go. I'm your guy. Well, I do want to finish off the video with something I like to call the fire round. I'm just going to spit out about 5 or 6 questions and just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Then maybe you can kind of ask me similar questions in return. So here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
Which sports team is the most popular amongst your sports fans?
The Vikings.
Football, really? Okay,
Football,
cool.
yeah, it's football state.
What's a must-try Minneapolis food?
It's the Matt's Juicy Lucy.
Ooh, what is that?
That's a stuffed cheeseburger. It's two
Oh
patties,
man.
stuffed with American cheese. It's got fried onions and pickles. It's a little hole-in-the-wall bar in South Minneapolis. It's the burger that defines the city.
Okay.
Even though I don't know if it's the best burger in town, but it's the one you have to try.
All right, I love it. I'll have to try that when I come visit. You talked about average snowfall. So, I mean, do you guys typically get a blizzard every winter, or what's the deal?
There's probably at least one blizzard during the snow season. Basically from November through March. I wouldn't call that winter, but we will get a blizzard or blizzard-like stuff. And there's going to be at least one day there we're going to get like a 12-inch snowfall, and perhaps even more. I mean,
it's inevitable. Okay. How long have you lived there, and which areas of the metropolitan area have you lived?
I've lived here the majority of my life. I was born and raised. I moved out west to go to school. I bounced around the country a little bit, but I came back, and I've exclusively lived on the west side of town, so Minneapolis and western suburbs. Kind of grew up in the northwest suburbs. I now live in Golden Valley, which is a first ring. It's right next to Minneapolis. It allows me to, as a real estate agent, I can get to anywhere in the Twin Cities in like 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay, cool. And is there anything weird about Minneapolis that people ought to know? Anything funny or anything like that?
Well, without getting too political,
okay,
it's interesting because I think we are the most conservative liberal state in the entire country. So, for example, I think some people think we're very progressive. However, it took us forever to be able to buy booze on Sunday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. As more and more states become a little bit loose to like marijuana laws, I think we're only medicinal at this point.
Okay.
So it takes about half the country to like implement these laws, and then Minnesota will follow suit, even though we always vote Democratic when it comes to like the president, our senators, things like that. So
gotcha.
It's weird that it works that way.
Okay. Well, good job during the fire round. You passed.
All right. Awesome. All right. Let's go with you, my man.
All right.
What is a must-try Chicagoland food?
So I think that we're known for our deep dish pizza, but I think a lot of locals love the thin crust. So if you are to visit here, the thin crust is phenomenal. And I know that goes against typical norms of what you'd read online or hear from tourists, but locals here eat thin crust mostly. I mean, I love my deep dish every now and then, but that's what people, and it's got to be cut in the squares. No pie crust.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's New York style, right?
I don't know. I think Chicago just takes the claim to fame for everything.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So we talk about snowfall here.
Yeah.
Do you get what kind of snowfall? And, maybe more importantly, what are the winters really like when you're?
I mean, I would say, like I was mentioning earlier, I think the last few years, and certainly the last 4 out of the last 5 years, it's been very mild. I would say 30 degrees. Maybe plus or minus about 5 degrees. And we might get that week or two in January, February where it's 0 degrees. But for the most part, it's gonna be very mild. We're gonna get an inch or two of snow probably a dozen times throughout the winter, and it's gonna melt within a few days. But we're not really gonna get that blizzard like we used to a few years ago. And I don't know if that's global warming or the change in the climate or what's going on, but we haven't really gotten that huge blizzard here. And I'm going to say this, and that maybe now we'll get it, but that it's not really typical here anymore.
Sure. Okay. So what is there to do in the winter, and then of course in the summer as well?
All right. So in the winter, there's going to be a lot of outdoor activities as far as cross country skiing, kind of hiking in the woods, and then every town's going to probably set up their own ice skating rink to kind of go do. People love we have a lot of festivals of Christmas lights and holiday lights and things like that. So that's really big throughout the suburbs and the city. And then in the summer, I would say that there's a lot of things to do in the city as far as festivals per neighborhood, and then going to visit Lake Michigan. Really big on like marathons, triathlons, 5Ks in this area, as well. It's just like the massive amount of forest preserves in the outskirts of the city as well.
Very cool. All right. And how long have you lived in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area? And
Yeah, so
what areas have you been living in?
Yeah, I was born and raised here, out in the western suburbs. I lived most of my life in Naperville. I did live 3 years recently with my fiance Kelly in Oak Park. So Oak Park is like one of the original, or should I say OG, suburbs of Chicago, and it borders Chicago, and the green line goes out to, and the blue line goes out to Oak Park, and all the houses are really old. So they're like 1910, 1920s, and they're beautiful Victorian mansions with window units. So no central air in a lot of those, $1 million mansions in Oak Park and everything. But it's a really cool community. And then when I first met her, she was living in Wrigleyville. So I got the experience of living, a block away from Wrigley Field, which was cool because we'd go, before they won the World Series, we'd go buy like $20 tickets and on like a Tuesday night and go get the $5 beers and whatever. And it was a good time.
Oh, that's fun. And is there anything odd that you would say that's about Chicago that that people either that have moved there that they weren't necessarily prepared for?
I'm not sure if it would be odd, but like there's definitely quirks about the city and the environment that you'll notice with people. I think when I go visit different sections of the country, they might say you have a Chicago accent. Maybe some people watching my videos will pick up on it once in a while.
Minnesota here, right?
Yeah. So I think if you meet someone who's been here their whole life or something, maybe you'll hear like a little Chicago accent every now and again. I'm really glad we could do this. I learned a ton about Minneapolis. It's definitely a city I want to visit to. And if you ever have any questions about Minneapolis, Nick's your guy. You should totally call him. He knows everything, from being born and raised there, and definitely reach out to him by phone, text, email, days, nights, weekends.
Do the same with Austin, guys. If you're watching this and you're taking off from Minneapolis, first call me. I'll put you in touch with Austin,
There you go.
and then we'll get you moved. But the cool thing is that we've got a really great pipeline with the company that we work for, and that's Keller Williams. And not to like promote that company necessarily, but when it comes to being able to move people and connect this way, it really makes it an easy transition if you're deciding to change communities.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys later.
All right.